Hello guys, welcome back to another episode here on African Confessions. There is a message that I want to share with you guys, and this message, it comes from an email that we received. Then one of our admins forwarded that email to me. The message reads like this: Hello my brother, how are you? I have a story that I want to share with you. My husband passed on a few years ago, and during the days when he was really sick, whereby you could actually see that there is no more life, the man was just holding on. With each and every day, people were actually shocked that my husband was still alive. And at that point, I had grown so tired. And men out there, you need to be very careful with the way that you treat your wives when you are still able-bodied, because at the time when you start getting sick, that is when you would actually realize that this man, he used you all his life. Now that he is sick, instead of him returning back to his girlfriends, he is here with you, and you are the one that is taking care of him. So when my husband was sick, I started treating him like he was a piece of junk. Sometimes when he would beg for me to touch him, to hold him, then I'll just refuse, because I didn't want to be close to him. The only reason as to why I just didn't want to get divorced from him now that I saw him lying on his deathbed, it was because of the things that he had, the properties that he had. So I knew that a few months down the line, I was going to be the one that was going to own all of these things. My brother, the blunder that I did was that when I was walking one day, there was this other young man who stays in the same neighborhood that I am staying. Then this man just told me that I looked really pretty, and as a woman who had gone for months and months without ever being in bed, as in making love with any other man, because my husband could not do it anymore anyway, I was like not feeling him at all because of the way that he was sick. I then just agreed to whatever that young man was telling me. Me and him, we then started dating each other. It even reached an extent whereby this young man would actually come into my bedroom, and my husband at that time, he could not even say anything. I don't know if he was able to see me, because sometimes he could actually stare blankly at you without ever blinking or doing anything. So this young man told me that when you have seen someone being sick like this, it meant that all of his internal organs, like his eyesight and his hearing capabilities, they have actually shut down because of the way that my husband was sick. My brother, let me go back into the past. As a young woman, I was born in a small town in Kenya. My brother was the one who raised me up after both of our parents had died. As for my brother, I don't know why I ended up doing this, because my brother, he taught me good morals. And when I became a big girl and when I was ready for marriage, that was when I met my handsome husband. Oh, I loved him so much, my brother. He brought so much joy into my life. My late husband, he was a civil engineer, and at the first time when he took me in, he loved me so much, and I then gave birth to our 3 kids, and life was okay. Then all of a sudden, when my husband was now making money, his behavior changed. He was acting strange. Sometimes at home he would not come when I would ask him where he had been to, because sometimes he would actually spend more than a week without ever returning back home. When I would try to ask him, he would shout at me and he would tell me that I never went to school, I have no brain at all. Unlike other women that he was working with, he used to call them the most intelligent women that he had ever came across that were also civil engineers. He said that all that I think about is sex and nothing else. He said that the reason as to why I was pressurizing him, it was because I can't have that I do not have that ability to look into the future, because when he was not at home, he was busy working for our children so that they can have a better future. I kept on blaming myself whilst I was in these toxic relationships. I told myself that I was the one who was wrong. I kept on blaming myself, telling even my brother that If only I had gone to the university, then maybe my husband was going to treat me. But my brother, to be honest, my husband was just lying to me. What he was actually doing was that he was covering for himself. He was being that abusive man so that I won't be able to notice that it was him who had changed. It was not me, because when we were still dating, we were always with each other. Wherever he was supposed to go to, like if he was supposed to go and manage another project, I would go with him and he would book a place for us to stay. And this is what I was used to. Now that we were married, I was not asking like for that same kind of lifestyle whereby we would be going around the country staying at different lodges. No, I just wanted my husband. I didn't want my husband I didn't want my husband to always not to be. I didn't want my husband to keep me. I didn't want my husband to treat me in such a way. When it came time for him to give me money, he would always tell me that I am someone that always loved money. When it came time for him to give me money, he would give me the money, but after giving me the money, he would tell me that I am very lazy. Other women, they had other side hustles. When I would try to have a side hustle, he would then come back to me and he would insult me and he would tell me that the reason as to why I had started that hustle, it was because I was a prostitute. Now I was trying to find clients whereby I would bring those clients into his home. He was saying that this was his house and it was not mine. Yet I had been there with him. He said that, how can you say that this is your house, yet you have never worked your entire life? But I had given birth to his children, but this is the way that he used to treat me. I had accepted the situation that this was just my husband on paper, but physically this man, he didn't love me anymore. I then found out that this so-called husband of mine was dating this other lady at his office. I was really hurt, my brother. I even thought of getting a divorce from him. But when I looked at my situation, here I was going to be a single mom of 3, no proper education, no what. Things were not going to work out for me. I then decided to stay in this relationship and marriage for the sake of my kids. Years went by, my brother, and God actually saved me, because the sickness that got hold of my husband, it didn't get to me. My husband started getting sick slowly. He was always coughing and he was losing weight. When he went to the hospital, that was when I heard the sad news that my husband had a tumor in his brain and he was given just a few years to live. And for me, my brother, those few years that he was given, I wanted them to be a few months, because I had such great joy in my heart when I heard that my husband had a tumor in his brain. I want to confess that at the time when my husband was sick, I actually prayed that each and every day, please God, may you make this tumor to grow big with each and every passing day, because I wanted my husband to just die. At the time that my husband passed away, I didn't even care about him. What I would actually do with that young man is that we would actually help each other. We would place this other mat on the floor, then we would take some blankets, just put those blankets on top of that mat and a pillow. Then we would help each other to lift up my husband and we would place him on top of that mat. Then me and that young man, we will start making love. We never cared if we made noise or not. We just did whatever that we did. So my husband, when he passed away, I do not know if he knew that this is what I was doing with my lover. But what happened, my brother, is that when my husband's corpse was brought home, the coffin refused to enter into the house. We don't know exactly what was happening, but it felt as if the coffin that we had bought, it was very big. We tried everything. They said that they cannot roll over the coffin because then my husband, who was inside that coffin, he was going to roll over. So the coffin had to enter inside our house whilst his body was lying, so that he was always facing upwards, but the coffin could not enter into the house, my brother. After they had taken out the door frame and there was a huge gap, that was when we were able to force my husband's coffin into the house, and we just have to leave him in the kitchen. So with the thing that had previously happened, whereby my husband's coffin could not enter through the kitchen door without it being broken down, then his relatives suggested that we should do everything with his coffin just there in the sitting room. After that, my brother, we then buried my husband, but I then started feeling really guilty, and the way that I was feeling guilty, it was not like something strange was happening to me. But later on during the year, when I was supposed to be mourning for my husband, that young man that I was dating, he kept on forcing me, and I had tried to tell him that please let us just hang on for at least a year so that we can start sleeping together, because I was still going through that cleansing ceremony whereby I was still mourning for my husband. But that young man, he finally tricked me and I started sleeping with him. This young man, my brother, he ended up dying because of me. And you know, when people tell you that once your husband has passed away, there is a mourning period, you can actually think that those are jokes, but this thing, it happened to me. You know what happened, Brother Nashi? One night we slept together like we always did. Then when we woke up, I was the one who was just like holding him, just placing my hand on his stomach. So I don't know what I was thinking. Then I touched his private part. When I touched his private part, I felt that there was a lot of fluid that was all over my hand. I was using my left hand to touch his private part. When I pulled my left hand out of the blanket, I saw that there was blood all over my left hand, as well as some white fluid. I then removed the blanket, and to my surprise, I saw that this young man's private part, it seemed as if there was something that had been eating him up. I asked him, this thing, did it happen overnight? He started crying, and I asked him why he was crying, and he said that this thing had been going on for a couple of days, and he was ashamed to show me that on his manhood, this is what had been happening. And he was ashamed to tell me that this is what had been happening. I screamed and I said, so you had the guts to put this thing inside of me? The thing seemed to be so nasty, you know, like it had been placed inside boiling water. That is the best example that I can give you. I felt like vomiting when I was looking at his manhood. There was actually blood that was coming out of his private part. So at the areas whereby it seemed as if his manhood had been placed inside boiling water, that is where the white thick fluid was coming out. My brother, when I tried to take this young man to the hospital, he denied, and I said, you want to die in my bedroom? No, get out, get out. He then took his shirt, and the way that he was walking, I was even afraid that he was going to fall and die in my house. How was I going to explain this situation to the neighbors and everyone? I then picked him up and I went with him to the car, making sure that my last born son did not see me. So I wanted to take him to a local hospital, but I was even scared that this thing was going to link back to me. So what I did is that I drove, and this man, he was really sick at that time. You know, when someone is really sick, there come a time whereby they do not care anymore about what other people are doing. He was just sitting by this passenger seat, and his mind, it seemed as if was in a different place. Then as I was driving, I kept on asking myself, as I was telling myself, you need to think very fast. You need to think very fast. That was when I thought of an idea of driving this young man to a different hospital that was in another different town. That was the evil thing that I did. I drove for many kilometers, and the distance that I drove, my brother, I had to fill up a tank of my car with fuel. That is how much I drove. For me to go to that hospital and to return, I had to fill up a full tank of petrol. I arrived, this was the next morning. That was when I drove to where that local hospital was at, and I then asked him to get out of my car. I said, "You see that man that is standing there?" He then said, "Yes, I can see him." I said, "Just go to him, go to that security man and tell him that you are very sick. Even if you want, you can show him, just show him everything that is happening to you. If you do not do that, you are going to die. Please do not mention my name when you go to that security man." He was really sick, this young man. He got out of the car. He then went. I looked at him as he was walking really slowly towards the gate. Then the security man and that woman stopped him. That was when they started speaking with him, and they saw that this young man was really sick. And the last thing that I saw was that they were actually calling some people that were working in the emergency department. Then I turned my car around and I started driving and driving. By the time that I returned back home, I then heard the sad news that this young man, he had passed away in another hospital which was very far from home. Even his relatives, they kept on asking themselves, like, what exactly happened to him? How had he managed to travel all that way? And for him to die in a hospital that was really far from home. So since he was someone who had been diagnosed with an STI that is called syphilis, they just thought that maybe in that area where he had gone to, he had a secret lover there who ended up infecting him with syphilis. That is how this young man passed away that I was dating when my husband was still alive. And at the time when he passed away, this man kept on forcing to have intercourse with me at the time when I was still mourning for my husband. That is how he ended up dying. Even though I regretted when my husband passed away, but when this young man passed away, my heart was filled with sorrow and my heart was filled with great regret. Yo, dear listeners, right there was a message that I received. It was forwarded to me by one of our admins. We received this message via an email. Strange things that people do in this world. Yo.